Welcome back to Mets Daily. I'm your host, Jake Brown, at Jake Brown Radio. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, please. We appreciate it. Share the channel. Smash that thumbs up button. The thumbs up really help the channel. We appreciate that. Comment below. What do you think of the show? How you liking it so far? What else do you want to see us add into the mix? We're at 850 subscribers through 3 weeks, so thank you so much for supporting. Share this channel with your Mets fan friends and family. Follow me at Jake Brown Radio on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Subscribe to my YouTube at Jake Brown Radio. At the end of this show, I will have an announcement, something cool I'll be doing, covering the Mets on a different platform as well on top of Mets Daily. So stay till the end of the show, and I will talk about that. It's Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Let's get right into the nitty-gritty, and we went without mentioning Pete Alonso on Hump Day. Well, we have to mention Pete Alonso today because a couple days ago, the Mets were reportedly re-engaged on talks with Pete Alonso, and it came out, Evan Roberts said on his show that someone had said to him they were on a flight with Pete from Tampa to Newark on Sunday. Very interesting timing. Now, it could have been a final checkup on his New York apartment before he goes back to Florida for spring training, and that's where he stays in the offseason. But the timing, it being the day after what was said on Amazing Day on Saturday by Steve Cohen, is very intriguing. And now the timing of the report that they're re-engaged on talks also makes it intriguing. Of course, you had Francisco Lindor coming out to say, hey, let's bring Pete back. Lindor will always say the right things. He's, positive PR. He's really the captain. Do with that information what you will. All this stuff comes out, in certain articles by, people who talk to Scott Boras. You can do with all that information with what you will. The timing of these things, always seems to line up in the favor of the agent and the client. So, the Mets always end up probably getting the short end of the stick in these things. But again, like I've said over and over in here, the Mets have given a very fair offer to Pete. And I think, and the reports say, he's desperate. And why wouldn't he? No one else is giving him a substantial offer. And he looks terrible. Him and Boras, it's really Boras, but they both look bad in this situation. And, the Mets don't want to wait till spring training to figure it out. The Mets are right around that $300 million number after signing Ryan Stanek yesterday. And, they're thinking, how much more do we want to go? Like, they pivoted. They got A.J. Minter. They got Jesse Winker. They got Ryan Stanek. They're right around 300. They could get into that 330, 340 range like they were last year if they bring in Pete. But if not, where do they go? Do they keep it lower? Do they just add Iglesias and no one else? Do they not make another move? It's very intriguing, and the Mets got to figure their roster out. So I hope we do get an answer on this soon, but it does feel like Pete's desperate. And the report also came out that other agents cannot reach out to Alonso. He will not be firing Boras right now, clearly. Maybe after he signs the contract, who knows, but not before that. So it feels like we might get an end soon, but who knows? Pitchers and catchers is just 2 weeks away. They're sending out the Mets bags tomorrow on Friday to Port St. Lucie, so I hope we get an end to this. Again, I've been on the team that the Mets should move on from Pete, but it does feel like he is going to come back just because of the fact there's no other offers. The Mets are fine with moving on. I don't think Pete is fine with not coming back, considering there isn't a substantial offer. So we'll find out how this thing goes. And the Mets got to figure out, is this the pitching staff that they're set with? Or could they make a deal with the Padres to land Dylan Cease or Michael King? Now, according to Pat Regazzo, Sports Illustrated, the Mets have checked in, with the Padres if that would be a possible. Cease is owed around $14 million. King is owed just under $9 million. He, still hasn't agreed to that arbitration number yet. There's a battle there. Both are one-year kind of rental players. Are the Padres looking to cut bait, try to shed money here? And what would it take? The SNY, there was a trade that former GM at one point, Zach Scott, would have done. Let's take a look at the Mets' top prospects and what might make sense here. I believe Zach Scott threw out Drew Gilbert, Jonah Tong, and one other player in a deal. I believe it was Jose Buto. I honestly think that's a fair deal for both sides. I think it's a great return for the Padres. Anything more than that would be an overpay for a one-year pitcher for either of those guys. At some point, the Mets are going to have to deal some of these guys. I have Ronnie Mauricio on this list, but I think at some point we expect him in the big leagues. Carson Benz, just got drafted, so I don't know how he's wanted yet without seeing a ton of, minor league spring training and any kind of time in the professional leagues with Carson Benz. Then on the right side, Brandon Sproat doesn't feel like the Mets are going to trade him. McLean maybe is a piece. Tong is a piece. Santucci's, again, a younger prospect. So I could see something like a Gilbert, Tong, and another mid-level prospect, maybe Benj or a Baez. Those three guys getting it done. I don't know if the Mets want to trade Jose Buda, though. He was a revelation last year. You're going to just give up on him already for a one-year rental? I don't know. And with both these guys, with Dylan Cease and Michael King, I think it makes a lot more sense to probably do this, when we talk about the trade deadline. Like, the Mets, I think, are happy with what they have. I know a lot of people want to hate on this rotation, but I think the Mets are happy with what they have. And like I've said on here, David Stearns will be proactive if he needs to. He's done it before. So I don't know if trading a haul for one of those pitchers for 1 year makes a ton of sense, when maybe at the deadline, if the Padres are struggling, maybe it costs you less prospects to go get one of those guys at the deadline if you badly need it. But I think the Mets signed all these depth pieces, the Blackburn, a Griffin Canning, Frankie Montas, these kind of guys, to put themselves in a situation where they don't have to go out and get another starter. If they add Pete too, you got to think, do they want to add that 13, 14 million of Cease, or the 9, 10 million of Michael King? I don't know if they want to add that money on. Like, they're already going to be blowing through the tax threshold if they sign Pete and add anyone else. So you could say, well, give them Starling Marte. Well, the whole point of this for the Padres is to deal out money. Why would they take Starling Marte, who's owed $20 million, even if the Mets ate half of that? It still wouldn't make a ton of sense for them to bring on money. The whole point is to shed money. So that's why it's hard to see a deal like this happen, but it's very intriguing, because if you're a Met fan, you got to be interested. Like, you got to be thinking about it. Another name who you got to think about, but to me it wouldn't make a ton of sense to do before the season, is Luis Robert Jr. Now, Robert, the report on Thursday was that there were talks with the Reds. The White Sox discussed with the Reds, Giants, a potential Luis Robert Jr. trade, but about them eating some of this money. He's owed $15 million in 2025, and then $20 million in 2026 with a $2 million buyout. So, does it make sense for Luis Robert Jr.? Now, 27 years old, still in his prime, coming off a really bad year, but he was dealing with a hip injury on one of the worst teams in sports history, and a White Sox team that was duking it out with the 62 Mets for the worst record ever. But, Robert does have some upside where, one, you can buy out of the contract for $2 million if you don't want to opt in for $20 million in 2026. In 2023, he was a 38 homer hitter with 80 RBIs. Now, as you see on the graphic there, another kind of guy like Ryan Mountcastle, where he does not walk a lot. Like, his career OBP is not ideal. It's under a third of the time he gets on base. But he does have pop. He is young. It does feel like the White Sox would be selling really low if they were to trade him right now. To me, this is another one where maybe you wait till you see him in the spring and you see a couple of months. Because what if you trade for him and he's still dealing with a hip injury, or, he comes out and has another terrible year? It also could be a situation where a change of scenery from, a terrible team and a franchise in the White Sox to a winning team like the Mets, maybe it motivates him. Maybe it rejuvenates Luis Robert to go out there and maybe go cash out on that $20 million contract in 2026. And he has another opt-out after 2026 for 2027. So the money's not crazy. But again, if the Mets are adding Pete Alonso here, are they going to want to add more money in someone like a Luis Robert? To me, I would wait till the trade deadline and see if you need it. And I think they're hoping that Jose Siri improves upon being a 180 hitter with Tampa last year. And, Jose Siri could cement himself as at least 100, 120 games in center field. You get some in Tyrone Taylor. Maybe you see a little bit of Luis Angel Acuna in center. We'll see. But I don't think the Mets want to just say, hey, we got Jose Siri, but no, we're actually going to get Luis Robert and play him instead. Because if you get Robert, if he's healthy, he's a 150-game player. Like, if he, look at his, he only played 100 games in 2024. In those 145 games, he had a really good year in 2023. So if you're getting him, Jose Siri essentially does not have a role in this team. Neither does Tyrone Taylor, which I think he's viewed as a fourth or fifth outfielder anyway. But if you get Robert, it's not sending the greatest message to Siri, which, I don't know, you traded for him, you told him you're going to be the center fielder, and then to do this wouldn't make a ton of sense. But I do think he's a name to keep an eye on when the season starts, or at least when spring training starts at the soonest, for the Mets to maybe look after. I want to close out today's episode of Mets Daily with a special announcement. We thank you all for watching, subscribing, smashing that thumbs up. We appreciate the support. The announcement is this. I'm looking forward to covering the Mets in written form as well this season and starting this week. Appreciate my guy Pat Ragazzo of SI for bringing me on. I will be a contributor writing for Mets on SI, which is a part of Sports Illustrated, but it is Mets on SI is what it's called. So I'm so honored to be part of the SI family. Listen, it's something I grew up reading, and my whole life growing up reading stories, reading the magazine, reading online store articles, have had friends work there. So to write and cover the Mets now for SI as a contributor, you'll see occasional articles. It's probably not going to be every day, but anytime there might be news, I'll have opinionated pieces, my thoughts on the team, all coming to you on the SI site. My author page is up. So thanks to Pat Ragazzo, thanks to the SI family for bringing me on. I'm looking forward to hosting Mets Daily every day, as well as writing for Mets on SI. So make sure you check the link in my Twitter to find that. And I thank you so much for watching and supporting this journey. You know, I'm adding SI to, if you don't know my history, I've written, I'm already starting off with wrong wording. I've written columns for WFAN covering the Mets. I wrote for CBS New York. I was with CBS Sports Radio. I wrote for Sports Talk 1240, AM 1240 WGBB. 4 years hosting the Amazing But True podcast with Nelson Figueroa at the New York Post. Kind of covered the Mets everywhere. I produced a SMY Mets podcast back in the day. And now to be added to the SI family is awesome. So SI is coming. And as I announced yesterday on my Twitter, producing a podcast partnered with the NHL and iHeartRadio as well, called Energy Line with Nate Thompson and Julie Stewart-Banks. So we got the NHL added to the docket, and we got SI added to the docket on the Jake Brown Ledger. So thank you so much for the support. Smash that thumbs up button. Please, appreciate it. Subscribe, share the channel. I'm Jake Brown at Jake Brown Radio. We'll see you tomorrow on a happy Friday right here on Mets Daily.